usually when we talk about like a household disagreement,
Yeah.
there's a baseline expectation of proportion.
Right. Yeah, like a logical scale.
Exactly. It works sort of like physics. You drop a glass, it shatters. A kid skips their chores, they lose their allowance.
Yeah.
It's just straightforward cause and effect. But when you step into the world of verbal escalation and like real emotional volatility, that physics textbook just goes completely out the window. We are suddenly looking at a rhetorical landscape that is, I mean, it's terrifyingly unpredictable.
Oh, absolutely. It is the absolute definition of a disproportionate reality. And, for you listening today, the learner, we are actually setting aside our usual stack of broad research.
Yeah, we're doing something a bit different.
Right. We're focusing on a single, raw, primary document. It's a personal account titled The Architecture of Abuse, A Father's Cruelty. And it details an extreme, real-time domestic argument.
A really intense one, yeah.
Yeah, it's extremely. So our mission today, the real focus of this deep dive, is dissecting the anatomy of this specific escalation. We want to track the rhetorical leaps, the psychological through lines, and look at how the author is actually forced to navigate the digital world just to document their own trauma.
Yeah, the digital aspect is wild.
Yeah.
But before we step into the text itself, we really need to establish some boundaries for what you're about to hear.
Right, a content warning is definitely necessary here.
For sure.
Yeah.
So, just so you know, the source material contains mentions of sexual assault, historical atrocities, and some pretty extreme verbal abuse directed toward a 12-year-old child.
Yeah, it's heavy. And it is also vital to remind you of our mandate here on the show. This text contains deeply disturbing and, highly charged viewpoints. We are not here to endorse any of these views, obviously, nor are we here to take sides in an ideological debate.
Right, no sides.
Exactly. Our role is strictly analytical. We are going to impartially report on the language and the arguments exactly as they are constructed in the source text, treating the rhetoric as, almost like a structure we are walking through and examining.
I like that framing. So let's look at the foundation of that structure. The inciting incident is astonishingly mundane, like incredibly normal.
Yeah, it really is.
A 12-year-old girl wants to dye her hair blue. She asks her mother, and her mother is completely fine with it.
No big deal, right.
Right. But upon telling her father, and I'm quoting the author directly here, he loses his frickin' expletive.
Yeah.
What follows is a massive 2-hour argument, and the author of our source text, who is the girl's sibling, is physically trapped in the room, basically forced to overhear this entire ordeal. So to cope, they start taking notes.
And those notes take the form of a chronological bulleted list just detailing the father's opinions as they unschooled over those 2 hours. It gives us this very rare real-time map of how a domestic escalation progresses from, a minor cosmetic request into something entirely different.
Yeah, and the jump from hair dye to his very first major argument is, it's jarring. We bypass every normal parental concern completely.
Right, you'd expect something about the practicalities.
Exactly. You would expect a parent to bring up the cost of the dye or the chemical damage to the hair or maybe like a school dress code violation.
Really usual stuff.
But instead, the father looks at his 12-year-old daughter and tells her that if she dyes her hair blue and a man finds her and assaults her, which, by the way, the author encodes in the text using grape emoji, it would be her fault.
Yeah, it's a massive escalation. He justifies this by stating the hair dye makes her inherently vulnerable. He claims she would be, quote, subjectively offering herself to the man.
Ugh.
I know. And to compound the attack, he adds that dyeing her hair blue means she is rewarded, using the derogatory term for cognitive disability.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second because I need an analogy here. It's like lighting a match to a candle, but instead of a small flame, the entire house instantly detonates.
That's a really good way to put it.
How does the argument jump instantly from a cosmetic choice to hypothetical assault and victim blaming, like skipping all the normal steps?
Well, what's fascinating here is the structural mechanics of his logic. In making that leap, he is actively removing the hypothetical attacker's moral agency.
Wait, I actually struggle with that interpretation a bit.
Oh, really? How so?
Yeah, because when I read that section, it felt like he was giving the hypothetical attacker maximum agency. Like, he is painting this unnamed man as an unstoppable, hyper-capable predator just waiting outside the front door. How is that removing his agency?
That's a fair point, and it definitely looks that way on the surface. But consider how we assign moral weight in our society. By treating the adult man in this scenario as an inevitability, like a weather event or a force of nature, The father actually strips the attacker of his status as a moral actor.
Oh, I see. Someone who makes a choice.
Exactly. You don't blame a hurricane for destroying a house, right? You blame the person who decided to build a house in a flood zone.
Wow. Yeah.
So in this rhetorical framework, the child's blue hair is the active catalyst, and the adult man's assault is merely a passive natural reaction.
Which shifts the entire burden of responsibility onto a child before an event has even occurred.
Precisely.
She isn't just defending her hair color anymore. She's suddenly forced to defend herself against the hypothetical crimes of strangers.
And the psychological weight of that on a 12-year-old is immense.
Immense. But isolating her mentally with preemptive guilt isn't enough for him. He has to isolate her socially, too, which is why he starts dragging the rest of the world into the living room.
Yes, this is a classic escalation tactic, the weaponization of the invisible majority.
Right. So the father tells her that, quote, all men agree with his stance on the assault. He turns to the author, the sibling taking notes, and explicitly tells them that they agree too.
He's actively forcing compliance right there in the room.
Exactly. He states that every single man he has ever asked agrees with him. And when the topic of women disagreeing comes up, which is relevant since the mother already approved the hair dye, he dismisses female disagreement entirely.
Just throws it out.
Yeah. He wonders aloud if women don't agree, quote, because they're women, or, quote, because they're hard-headed.
Look at the psychological mechanism at play here. Abusers often use this concept of an invisible majority to distort a victim's reality. It is designed to create a closed loop.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. Is he actually conducting polls with other men, or is this just an intimidation tactic?
Oh, it's absolutely an intimidation tactic. If he merely said, I think your hair's a bad idea, it's a one-on-one debate, she might feel she has a chance to win. But by claiming all men agree, he alters the math of the room.
Right. He builds a rhetorical fortress where the entire male gender is united against a 12-year-old girl.
Exactly.
But it's the immunization of the argument that really stands out to me. He sets a trap where it is structurally impossible to introduce a dissenting opinion.
And that's exactly how the trap functions. By dividing the world strictly along gender lines, he makes his argument bulletproof in his own mind. If a man theoretically walked in and disagreed, the father's logic dictates that this man is an outlier because all the men he's ever asked agree.
Convenient.
Very. And if a woman disagrees, her perspective is dismissed as a biological flaw. She is just hard-headed, or it's simply because she's a woman.
Wow.
He isn't just debating his daughter. He is systematically removing her access to an objective reality and substituting it with this panopticon where the whole world is judging her.
The terrifying part is that he has now firmly established this universe where women are fully accountable for the actions of men, and where women's opinions are biologically invalid.
Right.
But he refuses to stop there. He takes this logic and stretches it to a point that, it gave me literal whiplash reading it.
It's an incredible jump.
It is. We transition from a hypothetical assault in their neighborhood to actual global historical atrocities.
Yeah, the author notes a massive leap in the argument here. The father brings up the painter, which the author refers to as H, to denote the historical figure.
Right. And here's where it gets really interesting, structurally speaking. The father claims that H was, quote, justified in his actions because his mom raised him.
Just completely rewriting history.
Right. He goes on to state that all the deaths, which the sibling encodes with a skull emoji in the text, were his mom's fault, and that H didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
So we started at blue hair dye, and we have arrived at justifying the darkest moments in human history. Is this just random raving, or is this actually the logical terminus of his argument about assault?
Well, the initial reaction as a reader is definitely to view this as random, disconnected raving, right?
Yeah, a guy just yelling for an hour.
Exactly, just grabbing at the most shocking thing he can think of. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, if we trace the through line, there is a chilling, terrifying consistency in his worldview.
Really?
Yes, this is the exact same equation he used regarding the hair dye, just scaled up to a macro level.
Oh, I see. The woman is always the prime mover.
Always.
Yeah.
Just as he argued the 12-year-old would be entirely at fault for a man assaulting her, he argues H's mother is entirely at fault for H's historical atrocities.
That is deeply disturbing.
It is, but it aligns flawlessly with his established framework. In his mind, men's actions, no matter how catastrophic, violent, or world-ending, are merely reactions to women's choices or existence.
Wow.
We have to impartially note that the immense scale of this projection is staggering, but the internal mathematics of his argument remain perfectly intact.
Which means, in his own mind, he thinks he has won the philosophical debate.
Yes.
He thinks he has proven his point using history, but what happens next completely shatters that illusion. Having supposedly won, he drops the philosophical mask entirely.
He abandons the debate.
Exactly. The rhetorical vehicles about gender dynamics, accountability, and history are just gone. He moves into a direct existential attack on his child's right to exist.
And this brings us to the climax of the 2-hour escalation.
It's awful. The father starts screaming threats. He yells, "Leave, leave, you can leave right now." He threatens to kick both the 12-year-old and the sibling out of the house. And then he delivers what the author explicitly labels as the worst part.
Yeah, this part is hard to read.
He looks at his daughter and says, "You made my life a living hell." He calls her a mistake, spelling it with an asterisk, and says, "I wasn't supposed to have any more kids."
It's purely destructive at this point.
But then he delivers this highly contradictory, deeply revealing line. He says, "I should have aborted you. Sorry, I'm against abortion." Again, spelling aborted with asterisks.
That sentence, that specific contradiction, is the skeleton key to understanding the entire 2-hour event.
Yes, because it proves he is completely lucid.
Exactly.
When people lose their temper, we often say they're blinded by rage, right? Or not thinking clearly.
Sure, we give him that out.
But the phrase, "sorry, I'm against abortion," shows he's consciously aware of his own ideological contradictions in real time.
He's tracking his own hypocrisy.
Right. He actively remembers his own stated morals, pauses to acknowledge them, and then consciously chooses to bypass them in that exact second.
Yeah.
Just because prioritizing maximum cruelty toward his child is more important than his own political or moral identity.
It is a devastating level of cognitive dissonance, but it clarifies the entire trajectory of the afternoon. When we synthesize this entire 2-hour event, we see that the argument was never actually about blue hair dye.
Not at all.
Nor was it a genuine philosophical debate about accountability or history.
Yeah.
Those were merely the rhetorical vehicles he took to get to this destination.
So the ultimate objective from minute one was this total erasure of the child's right to exist in the household.
Exactly.
He just needed the simple, mundane request for hair dye as the excuse to unleash a deep-seated, pre-existing regret over having children.
All the structural mechanics we analyzed, removing agency, isolating the victim with a fake majority, invoking history, these were systematic steps designed to break down the 12-year-old's psychological defenses.
Softening the target.
Yes. By the time he delivers this final existential attack, she has been entirely disoriented, ensuring the blow lands with maximum destructive force.
It's just a complete breakdown of a parent-child dynamic.
It really is, huh?
But, to fully grasp the weight of this source document, we have to pull back for a second and look at the person who actually wrote it.
The observer.
Yes.
Oh.
The sibling who was physically trapped in that room, forced to endure the discomfort of this 2-hour tirade, and who then attempted to document it for the internet.
The author's framing of the text is just as important as the father's quotes here.
Oh, completely.
Yeah.
The very first thing the sibling does is provide this desperate disclaimer. They write, "Anything in the brackets are my notes. I don't agree with anything he said, to be clear," in all caps.
They are frantic to distance themselves from the father's rhetoric.
Yeah, but what is truly striking is the author struggled just to keep this post online for you and me to read. At the end of the text, they apologize. They write, "Sorry for the extreme censorship and vagueness. The post keeps getting taken down for some reason."
Which perfectly explains the surreal typography of the source text.
Right. So what does this all mean? The author is forced to use a grape emoji for assault and a skull emoji for deaths. They have to put asterisks in words like aborted and mistake. Does translating this horrifying real-world domestic abuse into cute emojis and asterisks actually make the text feel more surreal and disturbing to the reader?
This raises an important question about the dual entrapment of the author. First, they were physically trapped, forced to endure the discomfort of listening to the abuse.
Right.
Second, they are digitally trapped by content moderation algorithms. This is a digital entrapment that is entirely blind to context.
Yeah, the machine doesn't care.
Exactly. Content moderation algorithms cannot distinguish between someone promoting violence and a victim trying to document the violence they endured. The machine just sees a flagged word and deletes the reality of the user.
That's incredibly bleak.
It forces a profound realization about witnessing trauma in the modern age. We have to point out to you listening how profound it is that victims of trauma are now routinely forced to gamify or encode their suffering into algorithmic friendly symbols just to be allowed to speak about their reality in the public square.
Wow, yeah. They have to learn this bizarre, sterile new language of pastel fruit emojis and little star asterisks
Huh.
just to say, I am not safe in my own home.
It's awful.
It creates this massive, unsettling dissonance between the raw terror of a 2-hour domestic abuse incident and the cartoonish way it has to be formatted to survive a digital filter.
And if they refuse to adapt to that cartoonish language, their story is simply erased.
Completely gone. Well, let's summarize the journey we've taken through this document today.
Good idea.
We started with a perfectly normal request for blue hair dye
Yeah.
and tracked how it was used as a launching pad for a staggering psychological tirade.
Mm-hmm.
We saw how the father shifted all accountability away from hypothetical aggressors and placed it entirely onto his 12-year-old daughter.
We analyzed his invisible army of men, too.
Right, how he manufactured that to isolate her. We looked at how he stretched his logic to justify the worst atrocities in human history, and how all of it was ultimately just a vehicle to mask his own personal resentment toward his children.
And finally, the digital aspect.
Yes. Finally, we looked at the heavy burden placed on the observing sibling who had to translate their family's trauma into a coded digital language just to make it visible to the rest of us.
It is a dark exploration of how rhetoric is weaponized behind closed doors and really the complex hurdles involved in simply bearing witness today.
Yeah.
Which leaves you with a final thought to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive.
Okay.
As our digital platforms increasingly rely on automated moderation, forcing users to encode stories of real-world abuse with fruit emojis and asterisks, do these sterile algorithms inadvertently protect the abusers?
Oh, wow.
Right. By making the written accounts of their cruelty look less serious, less real, and harder for the rest of us to find.